Hello there. Welcome to episode 26 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalist.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and questions that we're working on today. I'm Michael Livingston, professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
And I'm Kelly DeVries, professor of history at Loyola University of Maryland. And I can announce it now, it's official. Next year, distinguished visiting professor at the Air Force Academy.
Congratulations,
I'm hoping
man.
they know that nobody flew in the Middle Ages. The Vikings flying over the waves, that's a metaphor, but
We don't know. We don't have all the evidence, do we? Do we know?
yeah, there was one. There was one guy who was recorded of making wings because he'd read the things. He's Eimer of Malmesbury, and he's recorded because he read he read the fables of the ancient Greek fables. So he made himself wings and he jumped off a cliff and broke his leg.
And did not fly.
He does.
And
He
did not
does
fly.
live. William of Malmesbury writes about him later and says, "Yeah, Eimer. Yeah, he's still around. Kind of can't walk."
He limps around. He didn't fly. He tried.
Yeah, no,
He's a
that's right.
faller,
Well,
not a flyer.
he flew in a downward motion straight to the ground.
Falling with style.
Falling with style. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations. You all have always been distinguished in all of our views. So this is good.
Sitting out in the field alone, I think is how my son once described me. I don't know whether that makes it distinguished or lonely, but sitting out in the field alone.
Well, I mean, it depends on what one's doing in the field. Like if you're sitting around a good battlefield and you got a bottle of scotch, like that's good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. True that. Bottle of scotch, yeah. What are we drinking today?
I'm drinking scotch.
We didn't announce it last time. We're doing the Battle of Falkirk. So
the Battle of Falkirk, yeah.
Scottish-British conflict, 1298. So you're going for scotch.
Yes, 22nd of July, 1298. I'm drinking scotch, but honestly, I'm taking any excuse to drink scotch.
Yeah, me too. That's what I was thinking. Scotch. I think we might have to double up scotch. There was this idea, the Auld Alliance is what 1294. So maybe in honor of the Auld Alliance between Scotland and France, that I'd get a wine, because I've heard Scottish wines are not particularly good.
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna not. I haven't tried.
We go Scottish. We go Scotch. We might have to have rival scotches. Yeah.
I'm drinking Macallan's. That's my go-to on scotch. Is my Macallan's.
I don't know, barkeep. I might have to go Ardbeg. I need that idea of scotch that you've just stuck your head in a bog and sip it.
Smooth.
Ardbeg is it. Ardbeg is it. It's smooth. straight out of the marsh, and marshes do play a role.
They do.
Which is
I'm not so partial to the peaty
I know
scotch,
you aren't.
but
I'm not either. But I'm not partial, to Scottish food. So you have to have a lot of good Scottish scotch.
Scotch. So yeah, we're talking Falkirk, and there's. One of the really great things about this period of history and this particular nexus, English-Scottish conflict, is that there are such good documentaries that have been made, like Braveheart, for instance, that portray with some excellent detail.
Yes, having a 5'3" actor playing a guy who was over 6'6". Absolutely.
Like having the Battle of Stirling Bridge without no river or bridge.
Where's the bridge?
Oh my God!
Yeah, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here. How old were you when Braveheart came out?
Well, I would have. I think it was like junior year of college.
Okay,
somewhere around there. I think.
Yeah. I mean, the movie.
I remember going to seeing it then.
The movie changed changed all cinema from that time forward. We had so many historical movies after that, and I think we can get to the pinnacle of Gladiator, and then even ridiculous fun things like 300 and Troy. But Wallace is Braveheart, best picture of the year.
Yeah.
Not best actor of the year, William Wallace, or Mel Gibson playing William Wallace. And it is funny because I was in the biz by that time, by the time you were a junior, and that summer the movie came out. I saw it 2 days before I was going over to the UK. It was one of my first years at going to Leeds, and then afterwards we had a Harlaxton conference where I was the only American, but all of these other professors were there, and I didn't realize Braveheart had not opened in England. So good old Matthew Strickland, one of our faves. Matthew had planned this thing out, so we would have papers during the day, and then the evening we would get together and talk about things. And they soon found out I had seen Braveheart. All these UK professors, half of them from Scotland. So Matthew teaches at University of Glasgow, for example. I was able to get them all from Scotland, and they all wanted to know. I mean, how is he depicted? How is it depicted? And I still remember Michael Prestwich, who will look, great historian at that point, but would go on to write the biography of Edward the First. And I said, yeah, you won't guess who the father of Edward the Third is. And he put his arm around me. He says, young man, I'm perfectly willing to believe that Edward II was bisexual, but he did produce 5 children. Not all of them, he says, despite the fact that there's no way in all that William Wallace would be the father of Edward III with Isabel. He says, because the age, but he says he had 5 children with her, so maybe we ought to check that. But so it's on. I think for movies in our lifetime, yours and mine, there's not been a bigger influence for the Middle Ages than Braveheart. As bad as it is,
it's bad. It's absolutely bad. So bad.
But
it's so bad.
But I remember at the time, and I can't remember who it was who said this. It might have been John Gillingham. He said, but it puts bums in seats. And that's the first time I heard the English phrase, bums in seats, that it'll put bums in seats. And sure enough, the year after it came out, I was teaching my seminar on Legends of Medieval History. And the student said, is there any way we could get William Wallace in here? So I did. I entered William Wallace in, got a little bit of Blint Harry that had been translated so I could read original. Although it's written nowhere near Wallace's age by evidently a blind man, so I couldn't read any of the accounts from Wallace's age. But at the end of that, all the students, because I always ask, is there any legends I should leave off? They all said, I got to leave off Wallace. He's just a thug. He's just a thug.
He's not a good guy. He's not good. And yet, I mean, you're right. The movie's fantastic kind of for what it is. It's frustratingly unhistorical, like top to bottom. I did a movie review of it a few years back. I think it was 2018 or something like that. And the entire review was just on the opening credits because there were so many inaccuracies. I don't know. I was so blown away. Like the opening, the narrator, which we learned at the end, of course, is Bruce. Robert the Bruce, as he say, I shall tell you of William Wallace. Historians from England will say that I am a liar, but history is written by those who have hanged heroes. The King of Scotland had died without a son, and the King of England, a cruel pagan known as Edward the Longshanks, claimed the throne of Scotland for himself. And I wrote, well, movie, I'm neither English nor a hangman, and you're a bloody liar. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Bruce,
everything about that's wrong.
Robert Bruce was known to stretch the truth a bit. There's no question. It was funny
and he's the guy.
It was funny.
Robert the Bruce is the guy, the Braveheart.
Oh, he is. Yeah,
he's the Braveheart.
Although finishing this, I was because I did ask Fiona Staples, who is a Scottish historian who actually specialized in the period, and I said, what is it? Why is it that they've not made a movie of Bannockburn? That's where at least the Scots went. And
Yeah.
she said, the English idea of a Scottish hero is Robert Bruce. The Scottish ideal of a Scottish hero is William Wallace. And I thought to myself, so you like the loser. So that's the Scottish hero. I started to understand Scottish history a little bit better. It was curious.
I was
Go ahead.
I was telling was so I was just gonna say my Livingston is a Scot name, and I mean I'm an American, right? So I'm a mutt. But it has never ceased to amuse me that the motto of my quote unquote clan, the Livingston clan, is "Si je puis," and I was actually talking about this today with my medieval warfare class. In context of Sir Gawain the Green Knight, it was kind of a weird conversation, but it was like, well, the motto is "Si je puis," and they're like, well, what does that mean? It's like, if I can, and it's so like, if I can, we'll see.
Yeah.
It seems, but it also seemed like, I like that for Scots. Like, let's talk about that in context.
If I can. I have to get there. We're pretty far in the north, there might be a cow or two to steal on the way.
If I can, I'll be at the battle if I can. In the course of the case of Falkirk, as we're gonna see, kind of important who isn't there.
Yeah.
Who apparently couldn't make it.
Apparently couldn't make it. And I'm 1/16 Scottish. I'm my Condy's from Clockbon and Clockmonmouthshire, so as low land as you can get, and the smallest county in today's Scotland. So that's where my clan comes from, and I do remember being told that we do not have a tartan. It was like, hearing that was like hearing that for some reason I was unable to, I was unable to progress to my PhD from the master's level. I mean, it was one of those disappointments.
That's rough, man.
It was interesting.
Though my Titan's terrible. Our tartan, excuse me, is terrible.
Oh.
So having none is better than having. It looks like Christmas wrapping paper.
I found out that having none actually works because you can buy the one on sale.
There you go.
The Buchanan,
get the one that's on sale.
I have the tartan and the Buchanans on my couch. So there we go.
Legit.
It was
legit.
It was. I think the interesting thing about William Wallace, and of course we're talking you have to talk about this battle within the context of Wallace and the life Wallace lives in the 20th and 21st century, as well as the life he lived in up until 1305. When I had gone to Edinburgh Castle before, and the tour around, you have to take a tour when you go to Edinburgh. They don't let you wander around. And the tour had been completely anti England when I was there the first time. So it was, the English did this, the English did this, the English did this. And then I returned after Braveheart, and now, even though they had one of the costumes the Braveheart wore in the film at the beginning of the tour, it was all anti-William Wallace. It was quite funny to see. And also down in London and Smithfield, before there was never any mention. And after Braveheart, they've got a big sign up here. This is where William Wallace was executed. Of course, they keep out of the film and off that plaque that it was the the hanging, quartering, and then finally beheading. But they did not leave in the castration. They put the castration, William Wallace the Ballless, at a certain moment in time. And he was still alive at that phase before he gets his intestines rolled up. So I think, myself, you're leaving off one of the forms of torture that probably would be of interest to especially 12-year-old boys.
His life did not end well.
Freedom.
For sure. Freedom. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wallace. It's as you said. It's hard but necessary to pull apart Wallace, the historical figure.
Yeah.
From Wallace, the legendary figure. From Wallace, the national hero myth that he is today. And it's hard to do that because of Braveheart makes such an effect. And at some point we'll have to do Battle of Stirling Bridge, where he does very well.
Well, in that one, well, remember we've said there's no stupid leader. That may be the exception. You don't lead your men across it, a basically single file across a bridge into an army on the other side, wrapped around the bridge in a schiltron, as they call it. But
that's all kinds of fun.
Bridge. William Wallace,
we'll probably not talk about that.
Let it out. I know I'm breaking the podcaster's code because we're not going to do Stirling Bridge for a little bit, but Wallace does win there.
He does. He and Moray win there, and well done. Good show.
Well done, William.
Well done. Falkirk, what we're talking about today, is actually very close to Stirling Bridge. I mean, Bannockburn is too. There's like a 12-mile stretch. All three of these battles occur. It's pretty exciting, pretty fun. At Falkirk, things don't end up as well for him. But to kind of dial back, what has happened is Edward I, Edward the Longshanks, that cruel pagan king, as Braveheart informs us.
Pagan king.
Which is like what are you talking about? Yeah, a pagan king? What?
Exactly. It's great granddad that has a archbishop killed. I mean, if we're going to go pagans, we got to go Henry II, and then just say, well, John wasn't particularly good. As far as religious elements concerned, but Edward I, pagan king, he went on a crusade.
Yeah, it's so weird. So, Battle of Stirling Bridge had happened in September 1297, and that's it was a major victory.
Yeah,
there's no question about that. It was
hardly decisive.
We could say like, was this a victory of brilliance on one side, so much as it was a victory of stupidity or a loss of stupidity on the other.
Yeah.
When we get to that episode, we'll end up talking about that. But the on the back side of it, the Scots have won an enormous victory over the English. There's no way, I think, to spin that otherwise.
No, and they did spin it at the time. We've got enough documents to let us know when news hits London, when news hits Edward the First, that his at least a garrison out of Stirling Castle has been destroyed by a rabble of Scottish soldiers. Really a rebellion, and I don't know that. Do you think that Edward I even had heard the name William Wallace before Battle of Stirling Bridge? I don't see.
I don't know that we can know that.
Yeah.
It kind of wouldn't shock me one way or the other. I mean, he did. Edward had a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, too many.
And yeah, certainly too many. I mean, one of the things that does happen in between the two battles is he concludes a truce with the French, which now enables him to kind of go, take both fists and head towards the north.
Yeah. And he's well into his construction in the Welsh castles, which bankrupts the treasury.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, he's
takes Wales out of the rebellion.
Right. So this is something where he's being kind of pulled in so many directions at the time of Stirling Bridge that maybe he hadn't really known. He knew there was problems going on, but he may not have known the name Wallace. After Stirling Bridge, he knows the name Wallace. I don't think there's any question at that point.
Yeah.
He knows this guy, and he wants to get this guy.
Yeah.
Because William Wallace, for whatever else he was, and I think historically he's not a good guy.
He's an influencer. He's an influencer.
Such a great term. Such a great term. You're so hip, Kelly.
I have no idea what an influencer is. But if there is one, William Wallace was in the 13th century.
You, my friend, are down with it, and I am saying that with with all the hype I can.
Then all the mockery you can as well.
What's up, everybody? A couple old dudes
just lost all our influencers. They just turned off the podcast.
How dare you? That's a really good way of thinking about Wallace, right? That he is a figure around whom things coalesce, and he influences the the idea of Scottish independence and becomes a kind of figurehead really quickly. And so he's got a target on his back now. And Edward, whatever else you can say about Edward, he doesn't take losing well.
No.
Ever.
Just tell Simon de Montfort that.
Ever. He is like, he's mad.
Yeah.
After Stirling Bridge. And he puts together an army, a big army. Now, exactly what size is where we always get in these questions of how big is it, right?
It doesn't have to be too large. I don't think that Wallace, Wallace is definitely, his recruitment is up after Stirling Bridge. I don't think there's a question. Yeah. But, he doesn't have Robert Bruce. Robert Bruce and the other nobles don't really join on. Murray does, that's it. So he's, how many troops Edward would need to confront what he expects. But whatever he expects that Wallace has, he wants 3 to 4 times that many of his own. So
yeah, and I think the way I read numbers, I think he's in the end he's got about twice as many, which is he more than he probably actually needs given what happens at Falkirk. Yeah. But he does go in strong. This is when he decides I'm going to get up there, and I'm going to mop this up myself.
And he's on the field.
He is going in heavy.
Yeah,
he's going in strength.
Hot, as they say. As another, I'm in the hip phase. He's going in hot.
Wow. I don't even know what to say.
Hey, it's spring break for me. I started spring break. I'm a little lightheaded.
Oh, yeah. Well, go easy on your wine there. So
scotch. We are drinking both scotch right now.
Oh, that's right.
I'll have a double, Barkeep. Double here.
I'll have a double. More peat. Put it in my veins.
That's right.
So he doesn't take losing well. He really doesn't. No. And what you have at Falkirk is a battle that should not happen, I don't think.
And I was just going to bring this up. I was holding the counterfactual until maybe the end, but this is probably an interesting time to pose it. If he doesn't respond, so if we're looking at say in the future, we got Bannockburn, Edward II is slower to respond there. It's just 1 day less than a year after Stirling is captured that he responds with the troops to get defeated at Bannockburn. Here we're talking really half a year that the armies the armies are recruited, the logistics are accomplished, and they are on the march. And that response is amazing. It's a counterfactual. What happens if he doesn't respond? Does the rebellion grow in Scotland, and does it start taking in some of the nobles who will be on the side of Robert Bruce and Bannockburn, but aren't on the side of Stirling Bridge? Falkirk. This is a very interesting question.
Well, I think Edward reads that correctly, right? He knows I've got to get up there and kind of nip this in the bud, because right after Stirling Bridge, Wallace actually moves south and is hitting southward, right? Carlisle, he hits Carlisle, he hits Newcastle, I think.
Both sides of the wall. That's what's
right.
Curious.
So he's making these raiding hits. And those hits not only, of course, are bringing back goods and booty and such, but are also, strengthening the cause, right? And so every week that you go with this unanswered, the stronger, Wallace's position is going to be as guardian of Scotland, as he's been named.
And I mean, we don't, as military historians, I don't think we look at what, we want to poo-poo the domino effect because we're pre-modernists. So the domino effect's, late 20th century. But there is some, after Courtrai, for example, in France, there's a real concern by Philip IV that the rebellion does not grow, that other towns don't do what the Flemings have done, especially Paris, especially Orleans. Those are the towns he mentions. He needs to get the propaganda out, and then he needs to respond. Same here.
Mm-hmm.
Edward seems to recognize that there is that left untouched, a rebellion will fester into a widespread virus if you're not dealing with it correctly. And so his response is also very, very rapid. He can do that because, as you pointed out, France is at least pacified for the moment, and so too is Wales. So he can go to a single front. Edward has fought three-front war for too many years, and he can. And so, if anything, Wallace doesn't read the tea leaves very well. Do they drink tea in Scotland? I have no idea. But he doesn't read the tea leaves very well because he foments a rebellion probably at the single worst time he could have in Edward's kingship.
Yeah, I didn't know how it was going to work out, right? Yeah. But yeah, this is in the end. You're absolutely right. This is able to bring the English power to bear, and again, they come in hot. They really do, with 15,000 total force, something like that. Maybe it's big. Marches straight up into Scotland. So, yeah, the timing of this does mean that at this point Edward can bring the full weight and capacity from the south up. It looks like a very, very large army that he puts together ultimately, mostly infantry, but totaling probably something like 15,000 men. We think might have been a couple thousand less, but it's a massive force. Marches them straight up into the heart of Scotland. And
no matter what the total numbers are on Edward's force, it does appear that he's 2.5 to 3 times the size of William Wallace's army. Now, armies of that much smaller win. We've done Agincourt, of course. We know that they do win, but not if they're particularly well. Not when you're facing a battle-hardened commander in Edward I, a man who's determined to put down a rebellion, because if he puts down harshly, then the Scotch are not going to respond, Wales is not going to respond, and the French are going to keep out of declaring a bigger war. So if I was a betting man at this point, I'm betting everything on Edward's side coming into a very, very strong victory.
Yeah, I mean, what it looks like Wallace is trying to do, and this is us kind of trying to make sense of what he does do, which is bizarre, and should not have happened and should not have been done. It looks like what he's trying to do is the Scots have pulled back, and this isn't the first time they've done this, right? You bring in your army, great, we'll pull back.
Pull back from there.
And to some degree we can wait you out, right? You've got logistical supply lines you got to keep up to feed your army and all that kind of stuff, and we can kind of pull out of the way, and then start nipping. Either when you're in retreat, right, trying to pick off bits and pieces, instead of like full, face on face, the entirety of both armies fighting each other. It doesn't look, I don't think, like that's what Wallace has planned. He wants to kind of do this. He knows he's got a lot fewer men, but I can pull back and maybe nip at him here and there. The issue, what happens is that Edward finds out where he is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
he finds out because of supposedly some Scots switching sides.
Well, the leakiness of any rebellion is going to be, because there's always, even if we go all the way to the American Revolution or the War for Independence from our British fans.
Go team.
they're leaking us all the way through because there's always somebody who says, the older way was the better. William Wallace is anything as a guerrilla
Yeah.
leader. And like most guerrilla leaders, if he sticks to that, if he sticks to the mountain, if he could get everybody to run around after him, and he picks off idiots like Sterling Bridge and who throw their forces at him in a way that only the Scots could win, then he's in good shape. The one thing I wonder about, I talk about these things flushed with victory. The battle at Stirling Bridge has given Wallace a confidence that no Scottish leader against the English has known forever, really. And does that then make him overconfident?
It might well. I mean, it might help explain why he ends up confronting Edward. That is to say, Edward comes to confront him, and that Wallace doesn't pull back in that moment, right? That he goes ahead and fights it. The whole thing has a kind of an echo to me, or I guess the echo would go the other way. But we did an episode on the Battle of Hera, and we talked a lot there about how that battle shouldn't have been fought, right? This is the position, the losing side loses because they take a terrible. They shouldn't have fought in the way they did. They crossed this river, took a bad. It was bonkers what they're doing. Should have just stayed where you are, man. What are you doing? And one of the things we talked about there was that maybe Enrique, in that case, who's on the losing side, feels like he has to roll these dice because of the social pressure of, if I back down, I've lost a lot of the impetus I've got and the leadership I've got. I've been playing this dance before, but I can't do that the whole time. I've got to at some point kind of quote unquote man up, if you will. And that maybe that too is here with the case with Wallace, that he's got this impetus behind him, but if he doesn't make a stand, that he's gonna lose the leadership that he does have. Maybe.
And maybe it's not an either or question. Maybe we're not talking about Wallace is so overconfident because he's flushed with victory, or Wallace is worried about his reputation, so he goes forward. To the point that he really just has never been in this position before. He's been a good guerrilla leader. He's really stumbled into victory at Stirling Bridge. It's a great victory. No,
Yeah.
I'm not demeaning it, but we've got the full weight of England now. I'm the first to say that in 1300, 1298 in this case, the English army pales in comparison to what the French can put on the field, what even the Flemings almost can put on the field, let alone the Holy Roman Empire or any of the Spanish kingdoms. But it's a lot more than Scotland can put on the field. Even if Wallace was able to have every single Scotsman in arms, I don't know that he gets 15,000. He's certainly more trained as a leader, sure.
Yeah, and to your point about like even Stirling Bridge, Wallace is the name that gets remembered, but I think it's really Andrew de Moray who really does that. Yeah, and unfortunately, even though that's a huge victory, he's wounded mortally. That at Falkirk, yeah, because he's mortally wounded there. So at Stirling Bridge, and so he's gone and out of the picture. And he does seem to be the guy who knows tactics. Wallace can get people rallied around kind of a charismatic leadership way, and that's an important part of leadership. Is charismatic leadership. But as you said, he's a guerrilla fighter. Field tactics is something very, very different. And the guy who seems to have known that is now gone, leaving like, we can give a good speech. Okay, cool. What are we doing in the fight, man? Like, what are we doing? Oh no, I'm giving a good speech. That's what we're doing. And that, in the case of Falkirk, it is absolutely clear they don't have any kind of tactical capabilities because I can't remember who said Falkirk. The story of Falkirk is advance and freeze, or something like that.
Advance and freeze.
Like that's
yeah,
advance and freeze, because that's what the Scots do, and they just get wrecked. It's awful. It's an awful fight.
And this is the time when all historians have to judge. Are we talking about the Scots lose or the English win, or is it somewhere down the middle? Because I think Falkirk really shows that Edward knows his tactics, and he knows how to set up a battle, and he knows how to win it. And he also knows the weaknesses of opponents. So even if he wasn't in Stirling, even if he wasn't had never heard of the name of Wallace before Stirling Bridge, he seems to understand how to go against these armies that are mobs. Essentially, they're not really trained armies. They they're not going to form the same tactical functions on a battlefield that somebody with a trained military force and a few veterans to keep everybody in that position will have. And Edward's got all of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is the Scott? Their main formation is the schiltron, which has a unique sort of set of capabilities that is good, right? Well, all right. Kelly, what's a schiltron?
Well, see, that was the wrong question to ask me, because I have taken a different view than most of the scholars have. I will say that Alan Murray, our good friend and good writer, published a book, a very good book on Baldwin of Bork last year. Alan has agreed with me on this, but I think that the schiltron it's a formation, but it's a formation like the hearse. It takes advantage of the terrain. It's a formation where you seek to I think it's just a crescent rather than a full circle. But the crescent it's performing what a phalanx did in the ancient Greek army, what a legion does in the ancient Roman army, and that's basically a defensive fortification, if you will, on the battlefield using shields and lances or spears. And that's what they sometimes talk about, hedgehogs. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But it's a weak formation if you haven't been trained in it, because it's got one person falls in a shield wall that's usually backed by somebody who will take his place. Same thing with the Legion, same thing with the Phalanx. That doesn't seem to be the case here in Falkirk, and it won't be the case in Bannockburn when the English try to do it.
And really, what this kind of formation is really good at a couple of things. Like, there's a reason they do this formation. They do this formation because it's very good at keeping the enemy kind of at bay, right? You have kind of think about the hedgehog, right? All these spears,
all the way through into Napoleon,
lances, whatever you call it, sticking out.
Wellington, and
that's really good against cavalry.
The squares, the same idea,
right? So that's good for that. Yeah.
And Waterloo does the squares, the same idea.
So this is good against cavalry. Cool. If you wanted to run at it, it's going to be pretty good at staving that off. So that's good. What is it really not good at, though?
Well, you're automatically surrounded. It's not just you've got to watch your flanks in this case. If you are in a crescent and then form up into a circle because they start flanking you, you're automatically surrounded. There's no getting out of it. You cannot leave. You have to, at that point, either tire the other force out, wait for darkness, or slug it out in a way that you move together in unison and you move right through the other lines, which has never happened and did never happen.
And so you're good at being surrounded and at becoming a pincushion. If the other side has got ranged weapons, cool. You just sit there with your stuff. We'll throw things at you, right? We'll hurl things at you. We'll shoot things at you. It's like that's a problem, and that's exactly what happens at Falkirk, right? This is exactly what happens.
It is. So pause here.
Yeah.
Is this the first great victory of the English longbow?
It is a great victory for the English longbow. Is it the first?
Well, Okay, that was unfair.
Yeah.
Let's just go with a great victory.
But it's a great victory.
An early one.
It's a great early victory. Now, I would say, to some degree, it's not a... It's kind of a by default sort of victory, right? Like, this doesn't appear that this is what Edward was planning. Like, oh, I'll just shoot him. Like, that's... it's something that ends up happening. It's like, oh shoot, they're just gonna sit there. Like, all right, just keep throwing stuff at them.
Yeah. If you have the other side virtually surrounded, they're sitting there in a hedgehog. And we got to remember, they're not in the testudo or tortoise formation. They're not got their heads covered. They're single row, maybe a couple rows around it in a circle. By this time, they're surrounded, and Edward can't. Risk too much if he charges head on into him, either with cavalry or infantry. But and he sits back and pelts him with the longbow archers.
Well, he does try to charge at him at first.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. But what it does do is it gets them into these formations, and now they're sort of just stuck there, right, in these formations. And it's at that point that
they can't move.
his archers, everybody gets there on the field. It appears that they were lagging behind as he'd marched up. They finally arrive and they're like, oh yeah, let's just start shooting them. Like, let's just do that. And like, that's it.
Yeah. and that there's no defense. There's nothing in the Scottish army, especially within those schiltrons, that can even reach the longbow. So and at that point, Edward could say to the rest, all right, lunch break. They go off, find the local Starbucks, get some coffee, sit and eat a couple of sandwiches, and all the archers have to do is sit and just
keep shooting. It's a massacre. It really is a massacre, and it shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been fighting. Like, this is such. What are you thinking, William? What are you doing, man? Because none of this is going to work out for you. We don't know exactly where the site is. This is a frustrating... We know, like, about-ish where it is. Falkirk,
we don't. I've been to the battlefield, and of course the problem is it's changed so very drastically. The river has changed. It was marsh at that point anyway, so it's going to change. That's all dried up. We don't know. Sources seem to indicate that initially William Wallace had forced Edward to take a position where his rear was to the marsh. But if that's the case, then you don't form up in a defensive formation on the battlefield, because that takes no advantage of having the marsh behind Edward. All he has to do is go around it and take his coffee break and let the archers, throw their arrows at you.
Yeah, it's either the battle is very close to Falkirk. We know that from the sources. I think if you look at Ordnance Survey maps, they have it kind of on the north side of Falkirk. Most people that have written on it recently have put it on the south side of Falkirk.
They have, yeah.
There's one theory that puts it on the east side of Falkirk.
Why not? Why not?
So
we'll write and say it's the west side, just to be different.
Nobody's found anything, and unfortunately, if it's on the north side, which, looking at the maps, that makes the most sense to me, honestly. Even though it's not what everybody's been doing recently, it looks much more likely to me. Unfortunately, all that's been built up. Like, it's all like business parks and stuff now. Like, so.
Oh yeah. It's the same problem as you got with
Courtrai. Yeah. Who knows now?
The sources give us an indication of 3 geographical natural occurrences on the battlefield. That's this kind of river, which is really described as a run in most, and I don't think it was very massive.
Stream,
it seems
a burn.
Does not have a problem crossing it. Yeah, burn. Yeah, it's whatever you've got at that point to discuss anything that's just a little marshy land, which is the second thing, the marsh, and then the woods, and all of those has changed probably before 1500, let alone before 2023.
Yeah. So
I don't know that we'll ever know.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
And I don't think this is a battle that we really need to know. So it would help if we knew exactly the terrain. It would help if we knew But the way that the Scots, when they're so overwhelmed by numbers that they adopt this schiltron tactic. Initially as a crescent, maybe at the end they have circled into it. They're completely surrounded either by the woods, but they don't. If the woods is something that they've expected to go back into to seek some sort of I don't some sort of pause in the battle, even retreat idea, they don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So the one thing I wonder is if Edward has moved behind them between the woods, which is another formation. He's got all the time in the world because there's nothing that these shields can do. They've either got to defend until Edward's too tired, and he's not going to be, or
Yeah.
they've got to break through. They've got to break a piece of his line, and his lines are so strong, and the archers are. I mean, if it isn't the first battle the archers are influencing. I certainly think this is the one battle that will change tactics for the English armies for the next 150 years.
It's enormously influential in that sense. It absolutely is, and yeah, just like why on earth is Wallace trying to take on something like this? You're not going to win, man. I can't fathom any way that he thinks he can win in this kind of like blow for blow. So it does make sense this notion that he was trying not to engage, was hoping to kind of like pick off pieces of the English force as they tired out over the weeks of being in Scotland. And he's kind of a guerrilla sort of thing. Like that's what he was planning on doing. And then when Edward finds out where he is and comes for him, he's like, well, I got to either kind of put up or shut up. And so this is what he does. But yeah, there's no tactical engagement once he engages. The Scots go out, form up, here's we're bristling hedgehog. Cool. Start getting hit and just stay there. Till they're mostly dead. Like that's the battle. It's
and it is well, not for Wallace. And there is some indication in the sources that he leaves a little early to get away.
Ran away.
I mean, none of his other generals, whatever you want to call them, Scottish forces at this point, get away. Wallace does. He's on horse. He goes back through the woods and he gets away, and he isn't going to be caught for another 6 years. So it's going to be his absence from the end is a bit telling, I think.
He does resign his leadership of
being
guardian of Scotland. When you're still alive, it's hard to do if you're dead.
And when you're still alive, and there's nobody's still alive who is going to say, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll take it."
Yeah, you're right. It's the main sort of commanders, as it were, do go down, but not him.
No, he escaped. Gets to the mountain.
Is a half of the Scots army dies, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's a huge because again, if you're in that type of formation, you are surrounded.
Yeah, where do you go?
So the only thing you can hope is that there's going to be ransom, and there's nothing ransomable about the Scottish troops at this point. On the top of the fact that Edward sees this as rebellion, he doesn't see this as warfare. He sees it as putting down a rebellion. This is the man who's going to wipe out Berwick for having some sort of possible relationship with Robert Bruce later on. He's not going to let the Scots say, "Okay, we surrender. Let us go.
Yeah,
we'll pay you a couple of tuppence. Head on south."
It's nasty business. It really is, because again, after they're kind of pinned down and then are getting literally pinned down, Edward just lets that go until there's nothing left of a defense, and then starts just overrunning them, sending the cavalry now and just start running them over, and blows them apart. Yeah.
Just right over them. At that point, there's no formation. There's nothing. Yeah, and they're on foot. Scotch are on foot, so they're trying to escape. They're getting ridden down. There's no escape for most of them. William Wallace is still on horse, so he can get away. There's obviously a group who want him to get away. But this is as strong a
Yeah.
victory as
Yeah.
anybody could have had, Edward has here. And the fact that the Scots remain in this kind of rebellious attitude and will be replaced by Robert Bruce in a few years, they don't really recover till 1312.
Yeah.
1312. I mean, it's going to be 14 years. That's a long time to be defeatist, and that's pretty much what it is.
But it is telling then, I mean, when you look at Bannockburn, the lessons that have been learned, we'll have to do Bannockburn because, it's a testament to that the spirit of the Scots that they do, despite
Also a testament to the fact that Edward the First cannot pass his military leadership genes to Edward the Second.
To Edward the Second, yeah. They're fighting a different dude. They're fighting a different dude.
They are fighting a different dude. A little too much Isabel of Castile, I think, in Edward the Second. Not enough Edward the First.
Yeah, Edward the Second's a different cat altogether. But yeah, at Bannockburn, it is the tables are flipped entirely, and it's a pretty amazing kind of comeuppance, if you will, in terms of how the Scots come out of that, because the casualties that they experience at Bannockburn are minimal, whereas the English lose a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's the coin has flipped to the other side. Yeah, there's no question. That's got to be another day.
Yeah.
I mean, Bannockburn's another discussion.
Yeah,
my friend, we've got to look to that when we get back around needing a Scotch beverage.
But yeah, so
podcast. Edward the
major
Edward
victory.
The First, major victory, no question. Longchamps, who I'm told looks very much exactly as he was portrayed in the movie.
Patrick McGowan.
Patrick McGowan, what a great performance!
So
I mean, best of the entire movie.
So good.
So good. It was, it's like Peter O'Toole was made to play Henry II. Patrick McGowan was the Edward the First of all time. There's no question.
What was the arrows will hit their troops too?
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah. It is, for all that the battle is mostly a slaughter. You bring up such a good point about the fact that this makes a big difference in terms of military technology and tactics. What the bows have done here, and the effectiveness of that being proved at this scale.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of important for some things down the road, like Crécy and Agincourt and all that good fun, where you've now built the army around this power to some degree. So yeah,
and I'm not sure. I mean, Edward certainly understands that, the idea that he has to sit back. I mean, he recognizes that if he fights the schiltrons on the schiltron on their scale, where he's sending in the infantry and they're fighting hand to hand, he's got massive casualties. He sits back with the longbow. What are they going to do? Toss their spears a couple of feet in front of them.
Yeah,
the longbows are ranging at least 100 meters ahead of them, and they don't have to defend either. They can sit down for a while, take a break in between, shoot their arrows. There's nobody coming out, and they're just taking. And the schiltrons are taking casualty upon casualty upon casualty. And this is why the one thing I would say is I do think, though, Edward has cut off any retreat from them at that point. Wallace has fled. The cavalry are gone, and it's now just these men that they can take their time in defeating and killing, which is what happens. So for you Scottish friends out there, my 16th, Clockmonmouthshire, sorry about that, but this was a big defeat for the Scots. Big defeat. Yeah.
It's awful. It's truly awful. It is a hideous thing.
For the Scots. For the English, it's not.
For the Scots. Yeah. The English. Yeah. It turns out good for them. No doubt. And after the battle, like, there's nobody to stand really against Edward, so he's able to sweep even deeper. It's just one kind of tragedy after another one. for the Scots here, and that makes me sad because I'm at least partially Scottish. So you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, my English side of me are going, Scots.
eh,
You know,
what are you gonna
what
do?
the heck? But no, I mean, uh, the fact is that Wallace proves how bad he is at this
Yeah,
point. And I remember writing long before the movie came out, my first book on infantry warfare, second book on infantry warfare. I just put Wallace away in a single sentence as I come into the later Scottish battles, Bannockburn in particular, and just say, yeah, ineffective, not a good military leader. He risks Scotland's rebellion at that point and comes up with nothing. And for the next 6 years, he hides out in the mountains until he's actually
yeah,
given up to the English, and then meets his end in one of the most gruesome torture executions in Smithfield that anybody would know. Not ever shouting freedom, even if anybody understood what that word meant in 1305 in Smithfield. What did he say? Did he say have another God? Is that it? Have another another glass? Freedom? What does
yeah.
that say?
Did, did anybody catch that? Did anybody get that? Yeah, he's not a good, but I would say he's a good military leader in the one sense of that, the charisma influencer, if you will. That is an important thing, right? But it doesn't work without the other pieces, or without having,
Know your
yeah,
limitations,
or without
dude.
having
Know
people
your
around that know
limitations.
those things, right? You can only have the charisma, but you better know that's all I got. That's why I've got this guy over here who's doing the tactical stuff. And whether that's because Moray's dead, he's not yet terribly trusted by a lot of the magnates in Scotland, and so they're not giving him the help he needs. So what has he got? He's got he's a cheerleader, and doesn't
Yeah,
go well. And all
and
the great
then
speeches doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah, and if you're played by Mel Gibson, it doesn't really matter. Uh, yeah, later on, certainly it's certainly interesting because we've been seeing the cultural change after the cultural interest in Wallace after the movie Braveheart. But the bottom line is, he's not. He didn't know his
Yeah,
limitations. So if you want to compare him to somebody, say you're Patton, but you don't have an Eisenhower over you. You can be Patton all you want. If you don't have an Eisenhower over you, we don't remember
yeah.
Patton anymore. In this case, we remember William Wallace only as he's portrayed in the late 20th century.
Such a bad freedom. The painted. Oh God,
Freedom.
brave. I need. I need. I need. I need three more because Braveheart.
Hey, they're
Well,
flashing them with
this is
the
this has been
lights
fun.
at
It's
us. They
uh
said,
it's a
you've
wild
drunk us
it's a
dry.
wild
No more Ardbeg.
yeah.
You know, got to ask the question, of course, what would, if you could have one thing as a historian to tell us a little more about this battle, what would you want?
Uh this
I think your pause is memorable there. I can't think we don't have anything to tell us any more about this battle. It seems really cut and dry, or in this case, marshy and wet. But
marshy and wet.
marshy and wet with a little wood and feathers.
I do wish, as always, because I so bang my drum for battle locations. I wish we knew for sure where it was. Mainly because I would hope that somehow that could make me like get my head around what Wallace is thinking.
I'm there with
Like
you.
if there was something in the topography but I honestly can't imagine what that would be.
Yeah.
Right? I can't imagine what sort of topography would make what he's doing make sense. And but maybe like that would be about the only thing is just is there some way that I could find a way to make this make sense? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Like even I'm going to go back against myself here. We said earlier, I said it makes sense for him to be kind of like knocking out, nipping at Edward. Yeah, it does make sense. But it looks like he's camped like 12 miles from, something like that from where the English are. Like, dude, that's too close. Like, so what are you even doing there?
And I think
there's so many things
anything,
that don't.
The
doesn't make
legacy
sense.
of Braveheart for historians, not as a movie, whatever, but for historians, is it makes us want him to be better. It makes us want him to be as good as he's portrayed in that film. And he's not. He's just not.
Well,
he's maybe not the thug that my students thought he was, but he's not a very good military leader. And as an influencer, he dies in a season when another influencer comes along.
Yeah.
In this case, 6 seasons.
I just like to. I don't like ever thinking, like a couple thousand at least men died on that day, on that field.
In the Scottish Army, I would be surprised if it was that low.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of men died, and I'd like to at least think that there was some inkling of some kind of plan. Like, it's just hard to have it otherwise. But
yeah,
that'd be it for me. That'd be it for me, man. You?
I think, man, you're thinking you want a Thermopylae. You want 300 to have a cause. You want somebody to stand behind and write and say, well, here's where they lie. These men stood and died. And I can't think of any reason why these men died on that day.
Yeah, Thermopylae makes sense. Like, I got my head around that one. When that book comes out, y'all will see. That one makes sense to me. Yeah, I got nothing. This is just.
What are you doing?
It's just, what are you doing, man? But and again, it's the same thing as with Nahara. Like, what are you doing? I just can't get my head around. These two battles are so twinned in my head for that very thing. Like, I just can't get my head around, why do you take the position you take?
Yeah.
And not do anything, like, and then do what you do. It just doesn't work for me.
I think we all want Wallace to be as good as Edward the First is.
He can't
be. Or as good as Robert Bruce is against Edward II, but it's not. He's not.
He just doesn't have it.
Go Edward.
Well,
the guy who's hated in history. Go Edward.
Go Edward. He makes a good castle. I'll tell you that. He makes a good castle. He makes a good several of them. A whole ring of them. He makes a good castle. That guy. Well, yeah, they're locking the doors on us.
Several of them.
I hope y'all join us next time.
What's up next time?
We're going to be doing the Battle of Sluys. 1340.
Or Slavs. Yeah, what's up next
you're going to do that. You go ahead, brother.
Yeah, however you want to pronounce it. 1340.
1340. And naval battle. We've only done, I think, 1 or 2 of those, so this is going to be good stuff. And it's an important moment in the 100 Years' War that I think doesn't get talked about enough. Mostly we kind of skip to Crecy, and look, I'm a Crecy fan, so that is cool. But also, hey, there's some other stuff that happens, and this is one of them. And Crecy can't happen if this doesn't happen. So
no, it doesn't. No, the whole 1340 campaign, I think, is I started in my own dissertation. That's where I began. But that campaign is the most important for the 100 Years' War, and we want to jump because we all write it from the English point of view. We want to jump to 1346. But what happens in Slough, what happens at Tournai, real important.
Yeah.
So we want to jump to 1346.
Yeah, we'll probably end up talking about Tournai too. Yeah, there you go. A little bonus stuff. We'll see.
Until then. Yeah. Oh, we got to do Tournai on Stone though sometime in the future. Because I think it's that siege that nobody
down the line
talks about.
As ever,
26 of these.
26 of these.
So within 26 more, we'll get a couple more battles done.
As ever, a reminder: this podcast is sponsored by Medievalist.net. So the best way to support us, other than buying our individual books, of course, is to join their Patreon at patreon.com/medievalists. And that is the absolute best place to drop us a line if you have questions for our next round of Q&As, which will be episode 30. So please get those in and start piling them up. Thanks for listening.
We got another one today already for coming up. We got people out there are anxious for number 30. So
let's do it. So thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.